The weeks following the battle were a turning point for the galaxy, and the Liberty was at the center of it all. The Zelnari, shaken by their defeat, had retreated into their war-torn sector, their pride bruised, but the loss had only made them more dangerous. While their armies licked their wounds, whispers spread like wildfire of a child born of two species, a hybrid capable of wielding unimaginable power. There were rumors that the Zelnari were not finished, that they were plotting to return, and their obsession with Lyra had only grown stronger. Back aboard the Liberty, life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. Jonas, Elira, and Lyra settled into their new roles. Jonas continued his duties as a captain, but his every move was now influenced by the responsibility he felt for his daughter. Elira, though still a formidable warrior, took on a new role as Lyra's protector. As the child's powers grew, so too did the threat to her life. The Liberty's crew had become a close-knit family, and every person aboard was now part of a collective mission to ensure Lyra's safety and future. But as time passed, Lyra's powers began to evolve in unexpected ways. She had always been extraordinary, her natural abilities seeming to develop at an alarming rate. But something changed. The energy that flowed from her was no longer just a physical force, it had become a conduit. A bridge not just between humans and Zyra, but between all living things. Lyra's touch could heal wounds, her voice could calm even the most volatile minds, and her presence seemed to radiate peace and unity. One evening, after Lyra had put herself to bed, Jonas and Elira sat together in their quarters, discussing the future. The war with the Zelnari had only intensified the uncertainty of their path. Their daughter was powerful, yes, but what would happen when she grew older? What role would she play in the galaxy's future? Elira looked out the window at the distant stars, her eyes reflecting the same uncertainty that weighed heavily on Jonas's heart. She is more than we ever imagined. Jonas, her powers, they could change everything, but I fear the cost of that change. Jonas took a deep breath, his gaze focused on the dark expanse outside. I know, I can feel it too. The Zelnari, they won't stop until they have her. They want her power, and they'll come for her again. No matter what it takes, we can't hide her forever. Elira nodded solemnly, and we can't shield her from the truth, either. She needs to understand who she is, what she represents. Jonas reached out, taking her hand. We'll teach her. We'll give her the tools to protect herself, to make the right choices, and we'll be with her, every step of the way. But even as they spoke, the universe was beginning to stir once more. The Zelnari, regrouping from their defeat, had forged an uneasy alliance with other factions, groups that feared the unification that Lyra's existence represented. The Zelnari's new strategy was not just to eliminate Lyra but to turn the galaxy against her. They would manipulate the growing fear of the hybrid child, spinning a narrative that would divide races, igniting hatred and distrust between species that had, until then, lived in tentative peace. And so, the day came when Jonas and Elira received an unexpected transmission from an old ally, Commander Irena of the Aldar, a neutral race that had been wary of Zyra and human relations for centuries. She had called for a council, a gathering of all major factions in the galaxy, to address the growing tensions. She asked for Elira and Jonas to attend. I don't trust this, Elira said, her eyes narrowing as she reviewed the message. The Aldar are neutral, yes, but they have their own agenda. And now, with the Zelnari making moves, everyone is on edge. We don't know who is friend or foe. Jonas stood up, his mind made up. We have to go. If there's a chance to negotiate, to stop the war from escalating even further, we have to take it. For Lyra's future, and for the future of the galaxy. And so, with a heavy heart, the Liberty made its way to the Aldar homeworld, a place known for its sprawling cities and towering spires that reached for the stars. The Aldar had always remained distant, preferring diplomacy to warfare, and their council was one of the few places where different species could meet without the threat of violence. When Jonas, Elira, and Lyra arrived at the council chamber, they were met by representatives from every major faction. The Zyra, humans, Aldar, and even smaller factions like the Vaughn, a race of telepathic traders, were present, but the tension in the air was palpable. There was no welcome, no warmth. Commander Irena stood at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. Welcome, Captain Carter, Elira, and your child. We are gathered here to discuss the growing concerns about the hybrid child of human and Zyra origin. There are those who believe this child could bring peace, but others fear that she is a threat to the balance of the galaxy. Jonas stood tall, holding Lyra in his arms. My daughter is not a weapon. She's a symbol of what we can achieve when we come together. She embodies the best of both humans and Zyra, and we will not let fear or prejudice decide her fate. Elira added, we've seen what fear can do. The Zelnari have used fear for centuries to manipulate the galaxy. But Lyra is different. She is the hope we've been searching for, a future where our differences no longer divide us but unite us. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, a voice broke the silence, one that Jonas immediately recognized. It was the representative from the Zelnari, General Soren, a towering figure with burning red eyes. You are naive, Captain, Soren said, his voice cold and calculating. Your child will not bring unity, she will bring chaos. The Zelnari will never allow a hybrid child to live. If she is allowed to grow, she will destabilize the very foundations of the galaxy. She must be destroyed. The room erupted in tension, accusations flying back and forth, but Jonas stood firm, his hand protectively over Lyra. Then you will have to kill us all, Jonas said quietly, his voice carrying across the room, because we will never let anyone harm her. She is the future, and the future is one where we don't fight each other. We fight together. If we can't understand that, then this galaxy will fall apart, with or without her. The room fell silent again. For the first time in ages, there was no fighting, no division. It was as if the words he spoke had reached something deeper in the hearts of those present. Finally, Commander Irena spoke again, her voice calm but firm. We are not here to fight. We are here to decide the fate of the galaxy. But make no mistake, Captain Carter, this is only the beginning. Your daughter's existence will spark a new age, for better or for worse, and you must decide what kind of future you want to build. Jonas looked around the room, his heart heavy, the weight of what was to come pressed on him like 1,000 suns. But he knew one thing for certain. Lyra's future was not just hers to decide, it was all of theirs, and together, they would determine if the galaxy would remain fractured, or if it would unite, as it was always meant to. As they left the council chamber, Jonas looked down at his daughter, her eyes wide with wonder, filled with an innocence that the galaxy had never seen. He vowed, silently, that no matter the cost, he would ensure that she grew up in a galaxy that could finally see past its divisions. For Lyra, and for all those who would come after her, the future was waiting to be written, and this time, it would be written with hope, not fear. He sacrificed his blood to save a dying alien, and she came back to bear his child, a sci-fi HFY story. Captain Jonas Carter had never thought he would find himself in the middle of an intergalactic war, let alone saving an alien with his own blood. But there he was, aboard the Liberty, an advanced Earth warship sent to the farthest reaches of the galaxy to maintain peace. It was supposed to be a routine mission, patrol the Outer Rim, establish trade routes, and avoid conflict. The universe, however, had other plans. The distress signal came in like a whisper through the deep void, and the coordinates led them to a barren world, nothing but a wasteland of broken mountains and dust. What they found was a dying alien ship, half-crashed, and its lone occupant barely clinging to life. Jonas had seen his fair share of strange creatures, but nothing like the one before him. The alien was tall, with shimmering skin that seemed to shift colors in the dim light, and a face that was at once human and completely otherworldly. Her large, dark eyes were filled with an ancient, almost sorrowful intelligence. Her species, the Zyra, were known for their advanced technology and ethereal grace, but their vulnerability to certain toxins had made them an endangered race. She was dying, and Jonas knew time was running out. The Zyra woman was in a state of shock, her wounds too severe for the Liberty's med bay to heal with its limited supplies. But Jonas couldn't just stand by and watch her die. The med scanner indicated her blood was dangerously thin, and without a transfusion, she would not survive. Without thinking, Jonas made a decision that would change everything. I'm not letting you die here, he said, and without waiting for her response, he connected himself to the medbay's life support systems. He was human, and humans were not exactly the ideal donors for alien species, but there was something about her, something deep within her biology, that made her compatible with his blood. She needed it, and he was willing to give it. As the plasma from his own veins flowed into her body, Jonas felt an odd connection, like an invisible thread tying him to her. Hours passed, his blood revived her, and the Zyra's alien physiology worked in mysterious ways, healing her injuries faster than Jonas could have imagined. As the medbay alarms quieted, signaling that the worst was over, the Zyra's eyes fluttered open. She looked at him with gratitude, but there was something more, something that lingered in the air between them. "I am saved," she whispered, her voice a melodic hum. "Your blood saved me." Jonas smiled weakly, his body still weak from the draining process. "It was the least I could do." The Zyra studied him for a moment before her gaze softened. "I will not forget this. You saved me, and for that, I owe you everything." Days passed, and the Liberty continued its mission, but Jonas couldn't shake the memory of the Zyra woman. Her name was Elora, and she had a history, a culture, and a secret she was unwilling to share at first. The Zyra, she explained, were a species that valued harmony with all living things, but they had been locked in a battle for survival against a ruthless alien race for centuries. Her mission was to seek peace, but she had been ambushed and left for dead. The bond between them grew, not just out of gratitude, but something deeper, something neither of them fully understood. Then, after a particularly long night of talking, Elora finally shared something unexpected. "There is another reason I cannot forget you, Jonas Carter." He raised an eyebrow, sensing the weight of her words. "What do you mean?" Elora's eyes gleamed with something far older than the galaxy itself. "The blood you gave me, it was not just a life-saving gift. It has done something to me, something unexpected. I am carrying your child, Jonas, a child that could bridge our two species." Jonas blinked, stunned by her revelation. "What? But how?" "I do not fully understand it," she admitted, "but our genetics have fused in a way that should not be possible. You and I, we have created life together." The realization hit him like a wave, but instead of fear, there was a strange sense of awe. He had always been a defender of humanity, of the idea that Earth's potential was limitless, but now, he was part of something far greater, a living proof that unity, even across species, was possible. His blood, a simple sacrifice to save a life, had transcended everything he knew. Weeks turned into months, and as Elora's belly grew, so did the bond between her and Jonas. The crew of the Liberty had been supportive, though they had many questions. Elora had become a symbol, a living testament to the unity that humanity could one day achieve with other species. But not everyone was pleased. The Zyra's enemies, the Zelnari, saw the union between a human and a Zyra as an abomination. They would stop at nothing to prevent the child from being born. It was a race against time as Jonas and Elora fought not only to protect their unborn child but to ensure that this new life could bring peace between two warring worlds. They had to be careful, because the Zelnari knew that the child of two such diverse species could unite galaxies or destroy them. Finally, after a fierce battle to protect the Liberty and its crew, Elora gave birth to a child unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The child, a hybrid of human and Zyra, possessed the best traits of both species, human resilience and Zyra wisdom. The universe was forever changed. Jonas Carter, once just a soldier, had become the father of a new era, and as he held his child in his arms, he knew that, perhaps, humanity's greatest contribution to the stars was not just our technology or our ambition, but our capacity for unity and love, even across the boundaries of species. He had sacrificed his blood to save an alien, and in return, that act had created a bridge between worlds, and that, Jonas thought, was the greatest victory of all. As the months passed, the child, whom they named Lyra, grew in ways that both astonished and bewildered everyone aboard the Liberty. The hybrid child, with her shimmering skin and human eyes, was unlike any other being in the galaxy. Her presence seemed to radiate an energy that resonated with both human and Zyra, a symbol of the unity that had been forged in the most unlikely of circumstances. Jonas spent every moment he could with her, watching as she learned at an accelerated pace. Her mind was sharp, absorbing knowledge at a rate that outpaced even the most gifted humans. She understood concepts that had taken entire generations of Zyra to master. And yet, there was something deeply human about her, something in the way she smiled, the way she asked questions that were filled with innocent curiosity. the way she loved unconditionally. Elora, too, had changed. She had always been strong, regal, and composed, but now she carried the weight of their child not just in her body, but in her heart. It was clear that their bond, forged through the act of survival and sacrifice, had become something far more profound. They were a family, an impossible family, but one that had been born from an extraordinary act of empathy and courage. But with Lyra's birth came new challenges. The Zelnari, the Zyra's bitter enemies, had not been idle. They had watched the events unfold with growing apprehension, seeing the hybrid child as a potential weapon capable of turning the tide of their long-standing war. The Zelnari feared the child would bring unity, not just between Zyra and humans, but across the galaxy, and they would stop at nothing to eliminate that threat. One evening, as Jonas and Elora sat in their quarters aboard the Liberty, a distress signal pierced the silence. The crew was on high alert, preparing for the worst. It wasn't long before they received confirmation. The Zelnari had launched a surprise attack on a nearby colony. The Liberty's mission had just become even more urgent. Jonas stood, determination in his eyes. "We can't let them take this from us," he said, gripping the railing of the ship's command deck. Elora, her face a mask of calm, nodded. "The Zelnari won't just attack us. They'll come for Lyra, and when they do, we need to be ready." The decision was made quickly. The Liberty would make a direct jump to the colony and prepare to defend not only the human and Zyra civilians, but also the future of their alliance, Lyra. Jonas had led dozens of missions, but this one felt different. It wasn't just about strategic advantage or military tactics. It was personal. This was about protecting his daughter, the hope for a new future. This was about ensuring that her life, and the legacy of what she represented, would not be extinguished before it had a chance to blossom. As the Liberty sped toward the colony, Elora came to Jonas's side. "We don't know what the Zelnari are capable of, but we know what we have to lose. I won't let them take her from us," Jonas promised, his voice firm, "no matter what it takes." The battle was fierce. The Zelnari fleet was massive, and they came with a brutal vengeance. Yet, the combined strength of humanity and Zyra proved to be a force unlike any the galaxy had seen before. The Liberty's weapons systems, enhanced by Zyra technology, proved more than a match for the Zelnari's brutal tactics. But as the battle raged on, Jonas and Elora knew the true test was yet to come. Deep within the chaos, a Zelnari strike team breached the Liberty's outer hull, forcing their way toward the ship's heart. The Zelnari had infiltrated, and their target was clear, Lyra. Jonas and Elora moved quickly, their hearts racing. Elora used her powers, the unique abilities of her Zyra heritage, to disarm and disable the Zelnari soldiers that stood between them and their child. But as they reached the nursery, the sight that greeted them was enough to freeze their blood. Lyra's crib was surrounded by Zelnari soldiers, their weapons raised. But before they could fire, a voice echoed across the battlefield. Lyra herself had done something unexpected. The young child, barely a few months old, was standing in her crib, her eyes glowing with an ethereal light. A wave of energy radiated from her, sending the Zelnari soldiers flying backward, their weapons skittering across the floor. The power emanating from her was like nothing Jonas had ever witnessed. She was still so young, and yet, she was already capable of defending herself with a force far beyond human comprehension. "Lyra," Jonas whispered, awe and fear intertwining in his voice. Elora reached out to her daughter, her heart swelling with a mix of pride and concern. "You're more powerful than I thought, my child." The Zelnari, stunned and momentarily thrown off balance, quickly regrouped. Their commander, a towering figure in dark armor, stepped forward. "This is not over," he growled, his eyes locked on Lyra. "The child must be destroyed before she becomes a weapon that can unravel everything." Jonas stepped forward, raising his weapon. "You'll have to go through us first." But as the Zelnari closed in, a miracle happened. Lyra's power surged again, more intense this time. The air around them seemed to crackle with energy as the ship's systems began to react to her presence. Lights flickered, the ground trembled, and the Zelnari were once again sent sprawling by a pulse of energy, this time so strong that it knocked the entire strike team unconscious. For the first time in the history of both species, Jonas understood the full scope of what their child represented. Lyra wasn't just a symbol of unity between humans and Zyra. She was a bridge to a new era, an era where the power of peace, combined with the strength of both races, could reshape the galaxy. As the Zelnari retreated, knowing they had been bested, Jonas held his daughter in his arms, his heart swelling with pride and fear. The galaxy might never be the same. But one thing was certain, Lyra had just ensured a future where the impossible could become reality. And together, as a family, they would lead that future.